to anything people say or keep adjusting your life
Mhm.
or to accommodate other people, you're doing them a disservice as well as you're doing yourself one.
Not being bad shouldn't be nice. Like maybe the opposite of bad can be good, but just because you're good doesn't mean you have to be walked on.
What happened to you?
Mm.
Because so much happened to us as kids
Yeah.
that shaped us. It's time to get out of that pot and get into a different pot.
Throughout the process, you have to allow yourself to notice that you're going through a change and warm up to things as they kind of unravel.
Both paid, but I was able to be redeemed.
Truth is something that unveils itself. Welcome back to the podcast, Mrs. Thomas.
Well, I'm so happy that you called me to return. I had a good time last time.
I appreciate that. And this time I gave you a little bit more time so that we got into it and it wasn't just all of a sudden.
Right.
For anyone that doesn't know you, who do you say you are?
I'm Vanessa Thomas. I am Eric Thomas's mom. They call me ET's mom. I am a resiliency coach. I am a person who has persevered over everything that has come my way because you learn that life is good and bad, soft and hard, and you just have to keep moving until you get into the space that you feel most comfortable.
I like that. It's funny as we're talking and I'm looking through things, we're talking about being in transition. And I think you being a resilient coach and going through the life that you've had and seeing your son become the man that he's become and pulling out the things that you've instilled in him. It's great to see that life still keeps going on and we don't stop learning just because we've reached a certain level, whether it feels like a mountaintop or a valley, so to speak.
Yeah, we do. I have a wonderful relationship with my son, but it wasn't always so. And even when I was struggling with how I felt based on how he was responding and feeling,
Mm.
through the growth, I could see when you can own up to things, then you can have a lot more empathy for other people because now you're seeing it from their lens, not your own. And that was a big aha moment that I thought we were okay back years ago, but I realized there was still a little tension. And it was because I wasn't always willing to be vulnerable, just to tell the whole truth, not just a part of the truth. And once I did, man, it freed me up and made me understand where he was coming from. And it just solidified our relationship that had not been solidified in a very long time because of that unspoken thing that needed to be brought out fully.
I'm glad you said that because it seems like vulnerability is a thing that's more popular present day and more people are accepting of it. And it seems that for whatever reason, whether it's the pressures we've grown under, or maybe you can speak to it yourself, like
Well, I
why
think,
was it challenging to become vulnerable?
well, from the generation that I came up in, you were taught to be tough,
Mm.
make a decision, you roll with it. But what it was doing was just taking in consideration your reasoning, not the whole picture. So it's kind of like you hear there's your truth, my truth, and the absolute truth.
Mhm.
It depends on what angle you're watching it. Our situation, Eric and I, was basically I didn't tell the truth about the father,
Mhm.
but I felt like because I never said anything against him and he didn't want to be present, that was enough. But it
Right.
wasn't. And I held some beliefs about his father that I thought I had gotten from under because I had survived, if you will.
Mhm.
But there was still this little residue of it. And once I forgave myself, because I always told myself that Eric's father and I relationship, while it ended, it wasn't that. It was his protecting his character for reputation. But I found that I was guilty of the same thing. And wow, once I saw my part, that I really hadn't done anything different except I didn't abandon him, but I
Mhm.
was guarding my reputation as well.
Mhm.
Once I could see that, I could just forgive the whole thing. And now it's nothing there. I saw him and I have no malice. I have no bad ill will or anything because he did what I did. It's just the results were different.
Right. That makes so much sense because for myself, how I've been able to relate to that is going through the transition period. And I've had to be reminded of that when I'm physically moving where I've moved to now and seeing it as it's not just you move to a new house or a new apartment or a new town, and it's like, okay, that's it. You settle in, you get used to the workflow. And it's like, no, this is an ongoing thing. And
Oh,
there isn't like a start, stop date, but throughout the process, you have to allow yourself to notice that you're going through a change and warm up to things as they kind of unravel. And I've heard
yeah,
someone say this recently, that truth is something that unveils itself, because back to the point that you made, where everyone has their perspective. And it's
mhm,
like, if I'm looking through my window into the room, what I see is what I see. I might not be aware of what's over on your side, but if I don't have the opportunity to walk over there and hear from you or be privy to something else, I could just be like, oh, this is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But it's like, that might not be necessarily the case.
correct. It might not necessarily, because I remember talking to my son's father, and I had became aware way years and years after the breakup. I mean, decades actually, and found out something about him that was going on in his life. And I said to him, at that point in your life, you didn't want to be exposed, and I understand, but I didn't know that. And so I had this harsher reality. Now, what he did was, it cost him so much of not wanting to be vulnerable that it was like, how can I stay mad?
Right.
My inability to be vulnerable with Eric created a lot of problems, but my love for him,
Mhm.
his love for me, was enough for us to come back into the middle.
Mhm.
And he could finally understand why, even though it didn't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
He could get it. Now I get it. And I had to say, yeah, when I got married and moved on, I got a do over, I call it. So
Mhm.
I didn't think I was wrong because he wasn't present,
Mhm.
but he wasn't present for a different reason altogether than I thought.
Right.
And then I said, what a cost that we both paid, but I was able to be redeemed because I was very vulnerable about things later, and it was knitted us back whole.
When you say you were able to be redeemed, like, what did that look like for you?
Well, as a mother, I felt in the beginning
Mhm.
I had been so protective of Eric. So what's the problem?
Mhm.
I didn't speak against your dad. I never slandered him. I allowed him to see his grandparents, and he wasn't around or wasn't known when he came around who he actually was.
Mhm.
And so I thought that I was honorable. And I was, and I wasn't. If I had to continue with what I had done or allowed to happen, yet tell the truth, well, you know what, Eric? I did tell him that he is not your biological father, but I could have pressed the family to say why he didn't come. But I just said, I got a do over. I'm not even going to concern myself with it. But
Right.
that unmet pain that people have has to be addressed, or
Yeah.
they're never going to heal. And I felt I just had to address it.
Got you. I guess, would you say you felt any kind of apprehension or fear when you look at, okay, I'm doing my best with what I have. I have to protect myself and protect, not just, you could say, emotionally. You want to protect yourself, your well-being, because I don't know if it's something that's considered a lot when people talk about having adult conversations, because the hard conversations seem to be the financial, physical, or now we talk about the mental. And I think sometimes, like, out of the five pillars, so to speak, the emotional and the spirituality, maybe spirituality gets overdone with religion, but it's not really understood or allowed to unfold, so to speak. So it's like we're so conditioned in today's time to, or I guess for all time, with a worker's mentality, or like constantly driven to like produce, 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 like survive, 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 survive. And it's like, if you're constantly on the edge of survival, you never have time to sit and think.
And you're right. And from the emotional standpoint, it was a struggle, and I was so busy surviving the
Mm.
struggle, the emotional struggle of it all, that I didn't see all the good. And it would have been the perfect time to be honest.
Mm.
But it was like things are smooth, nothing's going on. Obviously, the relationship with the paternal family is good,
Mhm.
but unbeknownst, there was a lot of things going under the surface.
Mm.
And when it finally came to a head, it was terrible because you're wondering. My son was like afraid to hear the truth, yet he was at a point where I just can't take anymore because it's killing me, and he was rebelling.
Mhm.
But I couldn't see connection with the rebellion related to his emotional state. I just, didn't draw, do connect the dots, if you will.
Right.
I thought all the things that we do for our kids, and especially the things that I had done
Mhm.
to change our life, that was enough. It's not. You still got to be honest and you still got to be vulnerable if that means you got to share something you really don't want to share.
Right.
And you are not only released from the hiding, if you will, and not for me, I never really had to lie
Mhm.
because I wasn't from here. So nobody knew. I got the occasion, oh my God, you got a son this short. Your husband's 6'8", but he looks just like you, and he didn't get any of his dad's height.
Mm.
And I would kind of, blow it off. But unbeknownst, our kids are struggling with emotional things and unmet needs,
Mhm.
and that we have to be vulnerable in order for it to help us. Yes, we have to. So
Would you my
I
bad.
wrote a lot from that painful experiences. But the other side of that being vulnerable
Mhm.
is so much peace because now you don't have that energy that you got to hide or protect. You're open now for more of the positivity in life because hiding is negative.
Right.
It's a negative spirit, and it takes a lot to get to the other side to be vulnerable. But there is so much joy and wholeness restored
Mm.
when you do that.
Right. It wouldn't be far-fetched to say you kind of feel justified in doing what you feel you need to do in the time and place when
Absolutely.
this is what makes sense, right?
Right. And that's where the anger came from because in my heart, I've taken you from this place that I
Mhm.
said I would never allow my child to live how I had to live and the emotional things that happened. And it wasn't necessarily my mother, it was like my emotional needs weren't met.
Mm.
And I don't want my kid to go through that. So I did feel justified. I felt that if your father don't want you, I'm not going to be the one to tell you anything about it.
Mm.
But not sharing anything was just as bad, I would imagine, as telling more than you that was necessary to explain away why he's not there.
Right. I guess hearing this from you and also being able to go through the healing process from a child's perspective on my end is giving me more empathy for my parents and seeing that even if they don't have the language to explain and express what you just did, there's an opportunity to get back to relationship and mend what's been broken and
Yeah,
being honest with tact and being honest to kind of let go of the things that you fear are going to basically devolve everything and make everything the floodgates just break apart and it's like oh like you're getting cast into hell and
yeah,
everything else is going to go like terrible and it's like okay if I actually tell the truth and I put myself upright like what's the best thing that could happen instead of just okay let's consider the worst things but what are the better things that can happen and then from there maybe we can build.
right. When you're no longer thinking in fear, you don't think about what the worst thing can happen. And
Mm.
that's why in fear, you're never looking for a good outcome. So you keep lying because you
Mm.
don't want it to come out. But knowing and being able to speak on the truth, I actually found that the relationship was even better because now we can approach each other and he'll say, Mom, I know you're my mom, but you're a baby boomer and there are certain behaviors that you've always had, but now that I'm helping you do certain things, we can't always be mama child relationship.
Mm.
Now, if I hadn't healed, I probably couldn't receive that. But it's like you're right. You're not an expert on everything. Your son is an expert in what he does. Then he is the voice of reason. But man, we wouldn't be able to be this frank had we
Yeah.
not cleared up the air for some things that were bothering him.
Mm.
That I was feeling some kind of way that he doesn't love me in a way that I thought he should. But once I understood his point of view, I could understand why he felt that way until we mended our relationship. And then it's solid.
That's awesome. And it's fun for me to see other people win because the more I've become the more I've gotten better, been better to myself, learning to see myself. I don't see it as envy anymore because before it would have been like, man, I want that. I want this. I want that. But it's like No, I'm happy for you and your son. And on this level, like we don't have to look at everything else that's come as a result of it, but it's like being able to appreciate where someone is and what they have for themselves and being able to celebrate that without like that needing to be approved, be affirmed. It's like, oh, okay, like because I'm starting to do that. And when what would you say has been since then? It's been years now, like what's kind of unfolded for you as a result of getting through that hard spot that you thought might have been impossible before?
I have a sense of ease and calm.
Mhm,
Before I would wonder, why is he doing this? Or maybe be reluctant to receive so much because I know the relationship was a strain.
mm,
But it was really an offering to me to, hey, mom, we're good. But
right,
I couldn't, I think my guilt made me feel like I wasn't worthy to take certain things or to ask for certain things because I perceived myself that he was angry,
mm,
but he wasn't really angry at me personally. He
mhm,
just wanted to know his birthright. And, he said, I went to the doctor and I couldn't even tell him certain things because I don't know. And when he found his father, I shouldn't say found him, when he met up with him officially as knowing he was his father,
mhm,
he was shocked because he had kind of been in and out of the picture, but not announced himself.
mm,
And then he saw, man, I see why I do certain things from the good side. I
mhm,
got this characteristic from him, or this love for so and so from him. So now he feels whole because he's connected.
mm,
And it wasn't a cost where it's this or that. It can be both.
right,
And that's what was hard for me to deal with at first because I wondered, now that he knows him and he's angry at me, how will
mm,
this affect our relationship? And it
mm.
didn't have a negative. Actually, it made the bond stronger once we sorted through it and we're both honest.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess how did your husband respond to it? Because since it's like you've moved on from the former relationship and you're trying to build and maintain your family, and then of course your son wants contact with his dad, and now it's like, okay, well, don't really
Yeah,
want to do. Yeah.
it's been crazy. My husband is a very balanced person.
Mm,
So as a father to Eric, he never was. Eric will tell you to this day he never got disciplined or anything. He treated him like it was his biological son. So
mm,
he said, all this rift, I ain't got nothing to do with that.
mm,
It ain't got nothing to do with me. I love my son. I'm his father. And so he hasn't shown any sign of envy or jealous or uncomfortableness.
mm,
I think we saw his father, biological father, a year ago. They spoke, but they don't really talk. I
mhm,
do remember once him saying to Jesse, thank you for raising my son, or something to that effect. And he said, I didn't raise your son. That's my son.
mm.
And not in a way of rivalry, but that no, I didn't raise him as a stepchild.
Right,
I
right.
adopted him. And so me and Eric don't have no real beef.
Mm,
And they don't. I mean, I went out of town a couple weeks ago to the Next Level Speaking Academy. And Eric assumed that I was going to leave his dad home. And he said, I got dad. I'll be sure that we get over there. Kids are coming home this week and they spend time with him.
mhm,
And I was so happy because I hadn't mentioned that I was leaving him. But
mhm,
he assumed because of the vigorousness of that upcoming 2 day conference.
mm.
And they had already had a plan in place for him. And man, that I knew then that everything is fine.
Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, man, it was hard. Dee Dee came by with food. Jada and Jalen came by. Oh, he was saying, "Don't rush home. I'm good. We've been eating good. They were bringing me food and spending time." And the kids laughed about watching YouTube with him. And I'm like, "This is a family."
Yeah, and it's the simple things. I mean, the like really being able to enjoy that quality time, and when it's not always promised or scheduled, but it's like when you're able to make things line up and you enjoy the time that you're there, I think that's very much worthwhile.
Yes, they didn't. It wasn't scripted, and
Mm,
but for them to suspect that I would need their help, and them coming to me and saying, "Well, we got you covered."
Mm.
And I'm like, wow, I didn't even tell him I was leaving. And I hadn't prepared food like I normally do because he changed his mind at the last moment. But it was just so, I mean, it was so heartwarming to see the support. It's like, you have to know, Vanessa, your family is whole
Mm.
and healed. And
Yeah.
you, any little doubt that you have, you need to get rid of it at this very moment. And I did. I was like, God is so good. He is a restorer.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to our last conversation that we had where it's getting to know yourself and being able to make time, like to consider yourself and say, okay, although I can do this, like I've got to see what are my needs. And if it doesn't work out, then I can say, no, I can't do this right now. I need to be able to take a break. I need to go do this because then when you show up refreshed and rejuvenated, you're not just ready to go, but you've taught people how to, and even like your own family, you're teaching them how you work and they respect and reciprocate that to say, oh, okay, like we got this. Like we
Mm-hmm.
know you care about him. We care about him too. So we're going to cover
Yeah.
this. We're going to cover that. And it's like, man, like what a difference a day make, what a
Oh
difference a
man,
plan makes.
it's like manna from heaven. I'm
Mm.
telling you. And because I have been sharing even more vocally about this over giving,
Mm.
I have a tendency to just stop everything for everybody.
Mhm.
And I realize that it comes from a place of not getting the type of attention I wanted, even as a child, especially in my early years of my mom. I had 13 siblings, and my mom just didn't have time. So
Right.
I was an overdoer to secure my spot, if you will.
Mhm.
And it translated into my adulthood.
Mhm.
But now I can honestly say, here are some things that I have to do,
Mhm.
and something else has to give. You know,
Right.
it's like the
Right.
joke. You got three things and one has to go.
Mhm.
So now I say I don't have to be the first line of defense for everything.
Mm.
I can get a housekeeper.
Yeah.
I can call and get them to deliver food or grocery.
Yeah.
I can let it go. I just say no. When we started packing up to move, I knew what happened when we packed up to move from the last house.
Right.
I cannot work at that level anymore.
Mm.
So I found that I haven't literally cooked in a month, and that's unheard of. But we haven't missed a meal. It's something in the freezer. We go out to eat a lot more for this period of time.
Right.
Because
Right.
I said, if I do all that I must do and
Mhm.
that I used to do, guess what's going to happen to me?
Get burnt out.
And I get burned out a lot easier at 71 than I did at 61.
Mm.
And so, not only being able to acknowledge that I'm going to do that, the bigger problem is we feel guilty
Right.
as caretakers. Our parents, our loved ones, our kids, our friends. If you're a caretaker personality like me, if I say no, I mean it, but I feel guilt.
Mm.
Not now. I'll be clear and just say, look, I'm not in the mood.
Mhm.
I'm tired. I got too much on the agenda today. And so, no, I would tell you I'll see before,
Mm.
knowing it was a no.
Right. Right.
But now, if I know it's a no, I'm going to tell you. And
Yeah.
my husband and I had breakfast late today. And he said, can we go? I said, we need to get to the market
Mm.
because I need to be home by 2:15 tops. And he said, let's go tomorrow. I said, oh no, I got
Mm.
to go here, there, everywhere. And I got a Zoom call tomorrow. We're not going to do it tomorrow. There's no space. We don't get grocery today. We
Mm.
probably ain't going to get any till Friday.
Mm.
So let's stop what we're doing. And I was shocked that I could say it and I wasn't upset.
Mm.
But here's what my agenda is tomorrow. If you want food, it's going to be today or it ain't going to be. And man, it was so easy. We had an hour and a half. We
Mm.
got home in an hour and 20.
Mm.
Everybody's happy. We can eat for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have done that before without having an attitude because I didn't ask you to do something. Now you want to change the plans.
Mm.
Or, God, what am I going to do? Tomorrow
Right.
I got to add something else. But I was frank and I gave alternatives.
Mhm.
We don't have to do anything today, but we won't be doing it tomorrow either.
Mm. Right.
And
Right.
we resolved it. That's big for me to be that forthright.
Yeah. I definitely feel I'm picking up what you're putting down there, and
Mhm.
I'm over here just smiling for you and happy for you because I'm like, I've had similar wins myself, and making that decision of being able to say no and understanding that you don't have to always raise your voice or fight, but it's like you can be stern and even steady your voice and having that steel confidence to say, hey, this is what I need. And
Mhm.
if you know you're dealing with someone that or you're speaking and communicating to someone that really cares about you, they can think about it for a minute. Maybe they'll be upset the first time or they might be thrown off, but it's like, oh, okay, like let me think about it. This is the priority. Like if
Yes.
we don't get food today, we're not going to get food till Friday.
But
That
you don't
that
have
might be an
nothing.
issue.
Yes. And you're right. The pushback, because this has been kind of happening.
Mhm,
And I would say, what, I don't have time, but now I'm clear. I'll
mhm.
see my calendar and I'll say, I'm not saying you have to, because maybe you could go to the store yourself. He
Right,
doesn't
right.
like to do that. But if you need me to go,
Mhm,
you gotta consider all
right.
those things that are important to me, not only that I want to do, but that I must do.
Mhm,
And the more I do it, I see they get it, because now they're accepting that change.
mhm,
As before, it would be pushback, but why we got to do this, and it's like now I can't. I tell them I'm not upset at anyone because that's how I operated. But
right.
I'm in a new season. That's how I put it. And
Mhm,
in this season, those things have to be thrown away
right,
in order for me to feel less stressed and feel like what I want to do is important.
right.
And that everybody's going to be happy tonight when I cook. Because
Mm,
trust me, it hasn't been a meal cooked in at least a month.
yeah. And
So
it's
yeah,
you
work with me
yeah.
and then everybody wins. But for me, it was finally being assertive
Mm,
and not so much the people pleasing, because someone spoke about the trauma or some of the hardship we experience as kids, how they mark us. And I
mm,
had to be honest. My mom, I helped her one time when I was about 8 or 9 in the supermarket. I mean, I was breaking down prices and the whole bit. And she
mhm,
was like, hmm. And after that, I would see a coupon or I would see a sale paper. I'm a kid. I ain't even in fifth grade.
mhm,
And I'm educating my mom how to shop. And I became so valuable, so I got the attention.
mm,
My sisters would say, oh, she favors you. No, she's leaning on me because I made myself invaluable. But I
mm,
ain't going to tell you looking back that I was happy,
mm,
but I was seeking her attention, and that's
right.
how I got it.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I didn't know that until recently that the over pleasing or doing for people is really because you're begging for acceptance.
right.
Because maybe what I needed emotionally, my mom didn't have, and she didn't have.
Yeah.
But I just figured out a way to make myself get her attention.
Mm,
My sisters didn't.
right.
So I wasn't the favorite, and I carried that on for years and years, and now it's like, oh yeah, I'm not doing that no more.
Mm.
Not healthy in the first place.
Right. I definitely agree with you because a lot of those principles that you speak to, I read it from this book titled No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it describes this syndrome or this caricature of the nice guy, as they may put it, because it's like the nice guy is always posed opposite of the bad guy. But
Yeah.
it's like in reality, not being bad shouldn't be nice. Like maybe the opposite of bad can be good, but just because you're good doesn't mean you have to be walked on. It doesn't mean
Exactly.
that like your life has to be problem free or you do everything you can to please people, because ultimately it's up to the person to decide what pleases them, what's going to make them happy. But it's like if you make that your life's mission, at some point in time, you're either going to get disappointed or
Yeah.
you're going to start upsetting the person that you're actually talking to. And then they're like, I
What
don't need this.
happened to you? You
Yeah,
used to
it's
be so. You were
right.
so sweet. Yeah.
It's like you're this milk
Us.
toast person, and it's like
Yeah.
that it's like because the intentions were wrong to begin with, that
Exactly.
persona got worn out. And it's like it was almost done underhanded to where it's like, I'm gonna do this to get the attention that I need, but instead of saying, hey, this is what I need, like what can I do to have my
No,
needs met?
it does. We don't do that. We do what you say. And then a person will say, well, why are you mad? You're the one that always want to be Captain Saber. You know what? You say,
Right.
You know, you'll sometimes say, you know what? They're right. Why are you always trying to be that person?
Mm,
Now they say it to insult you, but it's an aha moment.
mhm,
And then you say, oh, they're right. So I'm going to stop.
mm.
Not out of malice, but they're right. I was doing this for the wrong reason.
Right.
And then they'll come back and say, what happened? You say, well, I'm not that person no more.
Mm,
And they're mad because you were a floor mat, pretty
right.
much. If you agree to anything people say or keep adjusting your life
Mhm,
or to accommodate other people, you're doing them a disservice as well as you're doing yourself one.
right, right.
So now I'm like, not mean, but I'll say, I can honestly, I ain't never done this before, but I actually promised somebody some stuff. I was going to do some stuff, I was going to
Mhm,
cook. In the midst of the day, I said, I don't feel like it. I
mm.
could have never done that. You hear me?
Right, right.
Actually, I would have been the person who would have did it with resentment
Mm,
or bitterness because I was raised to say if you promise, you cannot break a promise.
right.
But I'll give the segue into it. I know I promised it,
Mhm,
but you know what? I ain't feeling it. I got a headache, or I didn't sleep good, or I just don't want to do
mm.
it. And I say it without being defensive.
Right.
And they'll say, well, I said, I know what I said, but
Yeah.
what I'll do is say tomorrow after 4 because I remember the next day being real busy. But after
Mhm,
4 tomorrow,
yeah.
I can do it. But you know what? I'm going to take a nap.
Mm,
And the person started respecting me differently because I wasn't always willing to switch gears.
right.
And I've done that with most of the people in my life. I don't care who you are. If you call me and it's not a fire,
Mhm,
I will tell you, girl, I ain't in the mood to come and do that, or
mm.
I ain't available. Well, you
Right,
know I can't.
right, right.
I'm about to go on Do Not Disturb and listen to a book.
Mm,
And I said, I'm sorry,
yeah.
without guilt.
Right. And that without guilt part is something you have to work at constantly because even for myself, I see it like through having done coaching and counseling, going through the sessions, it actually feels good to reach out to my coach and to say, "Hey, I've got good news. Like I want to check in. It's been a few weeks, it's been a month,
Mhm.
but I want to check in, see you're good, your family's good, and actually let you know here's some of the wins. Here's maybe a stressor that came up, but here's the exercise that I use. Here's how I walk through it." And I actually allowed myself to go through the progression to where when I started, I was like, I don't want to stay attached to something to where it's like I always have to be dependent, be dependent, be dependent. It's like I want to be able to be interdependent, like lean on people, lean on their strengths to use my strengths, but I don't want to be always in a place of desperation or need to where it's like, okay, like the world's falling apart. It's like I don't want to wake up as a groundhog's day where it's same thing, rinse and
Okay.
repeat, same thing. And it's just like you're dreading the day, you're dreading the next step. And it's like, man, when do I get out of this hole? When do I get
Mhm.
out of this pit? Like, why is everything just blah, 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 blah? And it's like when those moments and times come up, it's using subtle reminders of like, okay, this is a moment that's happening. Like something's happening.
Mhm. Mhm.
I can pause. I recognize that something's happening. Let me breathe. If it feels so overwhelming, maybe I can step back, walk away, like stop literally. Because if I'm doing something so much so to where my life is at risk or I don't feel that I can control the outcome in a way that doesn't put me at risk, then
Mhm.
something's not right there. And it's like going through that process step by step and reminding myself that I get to decide in every situation that I step into what are the outcomes that I want and
Yes.
what are what are the things that I can give. And if I can't give anything, just like especially with family, learning that there's a time and place for things and maybe somebody's on a 10 and I'm on a 1 and I'm like, yeah, right now is not the time. And it's like I
See?
respect you. You know, I love you. I'll call you back. We'll come back to it. And like when you even talk, it might not have been even been that important. They don't even remember it. It's like it blew by, water under the bridge, something else came up. Oh, look at that, a solution that came up and I didn't
See?
have to do anything to like resolve it or do anything about that.
Well, once I think we hone in to our own true self,
Mhm,
because like I said, I was an over giver and over promiser.
mm,
And once I got burnt out, I actually asked myself, who does anything for you really?
right.
And it's like, you never ask nobody to do anything. I'm a MacGyver.
Yeah.
Call me and everybody does.
Mhm,
MacGyver, I got a problem. I got a solution. It might be go around the horn to get to it. But finally I asked myself, how is this what you do healthy?
mm.
All this over giving and supportiveness, if there's never any reciprocity,
Yeah. You're not getting a
then
TV
that's
show out of
not
it.
right. That's not healthy.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, I remember thinking, well, I ain't no point of me being mad because I created these monsters.
Mhm,
Now, what do you do to tame them? You learn to say no. Sometimes I have a conversation and say, hey, this is what I used to do, but I'm no longer doing it because it's impeding my growth for my own personal life. Or, I can't do things on the level I could do when I was even 65. So we're going to
mm.
have to back that up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I've had pushback. Someone said to me, a close family member, you could do it if you wanted to. And thought about it for a hot second and I said, you're right. I don't want to.
Mm.
So instead of getting defensive, I
Yeah.
leaned in and said, you're right. And I'm not. I've been doing this and I ain't mad and I may do it again. But the presumption that every time you ask for this particular thing is going to be met is not happening. And
Right.
they got upset. But guess what? We got a new level of self respect for one another.
Mm,
They know that my boundaries used to be fluid,
mhm,
but they know about certain things. They're not fluid anymore. They're
mm.
rigid. You're
Yeah.
not gonna go beyond something that I'm comfortable with.
Mhm.
Even though I did it in the past, I had this resentment or this feeling some kind of way.
Right.
Now I don't do that.
Yeah.
And I feel that people respect you more when you have real boundaries and expectations too.
Mm,
Like, do I have to say to one friend, what you do for me, girl? You always got at wanting something. I say, girl, what you do for me? Girl,
mm.
don't be like that. No, I'm just saying. What
Yeah.
you're mad because I won't come through. What do you do for me?
Mhm.
Oh, you live too far, or girl, I can't do it this week. It's like I'm being more mindful because I was so much in that giving helpful mentality. I never
Mhm.
really saw there was hardly any reciprocity from
Right.
family or friends
Yeah.
because I didn't require it. I not that I didn't require it for the relationship. I felt I had to do all of this,
Mm.
and now that I realize I don't, and that I have no reason to be mad because of some things I set up into motion. Now I'm healthier, and I believe that they recognize that now and they don't push the boundaries like they used to.
Right. Man, that's such a good insight.
Oh man, I'm telling you, we have this thing. I call it. My mom, she was the subliminal suggestion queen. Oh my
Mm.
God. She never, my mom, I look back and we had the worst fight about something I asked her to do and she wouldn't do it. And
Mm.
I said, I do everything you ask me to do, mom. And she said, I have never asked you to do a damn thing for me. And
Mm.
I just cried. But when
Man,
I
that's
look back, she never had.
right.
She just put that subliminal suggestion out there. And that's
Yeah.
wicked
Yeah.
because she could admit that she never asked. And when I researched back in my head, she
Yeah.
had not. But I had been groomed to take her suggestions.
Right.
And with my adult life, I went in with that same mindset. We got to
Mm.
make a shift.
Yeah.
If something we finally realize is not healthy and it's being manipulative,
Mhm.
because some people are more keen to those subtle suggestions.
Yeah.
I could hear my mom wanting to go to get Chinese food and she wouldn't say it, but she might say, "Oh, I ain't had an egg roll in a long time."
Mm.
And automatically knew, "Oh, I need to take her to Kowloon's."
Right. Right.
And we would get into this fight about who's going to pay, knowing she wasn't going to pay.
Right.
But we would get into this fight. And then I'm like, I don't want to do that no more.
Mm.
So I said to her, you were right, mom, about not asking me for anything, but I'm going to ask you to respect me because if you don't ask, I'm not going to make the first move.
Right.
And I meant it because how dare you be so right?
Hmm.
I've been primed for everybody's needs since a little girl. And with people, be mindful of that
Yeah.
and find out, is it still applicable? Is it still help? Is it still necessary? How do you
Right.
feel when people constantly ask you without asking? And
Mm.
if you're not comfortable, you got to tell them. Or for me, I would just pretend I didn't hear it. It's like, put the shield up. I would say that, like Star Trek,
Yeah.
shields up. I ain't hearing no undirect commands or ask.
Hmm.
You don't ask plain, I'm not doing it because I
Yeah.
get the foot in the butt because they say nobody asked you to do all that. You the
Mm.
one wanted to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you prime me. You know how I'm cut.
Yeah.
And now I don't do it. If I hear it honestly, I put the shield up and I don't have this blank face like I didn't hear nothing you just said. And they're uncomfortable for a second, like, I know no, I did, but the shield went up before it caught me. Okay, so
Right.
sorry.
Yeah.
We're forever needing to change, grow, and adapt.
I agree with you.
It's we can't be who we are at 5, 10, 20, 50, 70. At 71, a lot of things that I took for granted and thought I needed to do, you can't.
Mm.
And you have to come to terms with it. And younger, if you do too much for people and accept every little acts they want, you are enabling and making them entitled.
Mm.
And entitled people don't see what you do, only see what thing they asked for that you did not do. And
Mm.
you're left crying all the time because you can't win,
Right.
but you can change.
That's powerful. And man, I think we might just have to end it there because it's like
God has
you don't
never
have to
since
win,
we
but
talked.
you can change.
That's right.
Oh man, I love that
You can change.
because it's like I think what you're really speaking to is like speaking against the sacred cow, so to speak, or like the unspoken. It's like we tend to operate in a fog, so to speak, and it's that you have an idea of what's going on, but you don't know what you're fighting against. It's like, is it one person? And it's never even like the person, but it's like behaviors,
Yes,
attitudes,
societal.
problems that like
Uh,
create all these challenges that wouldn't really be there if things were direct, talked through truthfully.
right.
And it's like you don't have to
Society,
go
you
tell off
don't
your whole
question.
family. Yeah.
Right. You don't question. You do as you're told. This
Hmm.
is how we operate. And but we all agree that our mother was the person who never talked plain, never. And then in a lot of our siblings and myself included, I was never totally direct unless it was one of those situations where it's like, oh heck no, you're not about to talk to me or do that. But we were taught to don't rock the boat.
Yeah.
And it's created so much stress, unnecessary stress in our lives
Hmm.
because we don't want to say to a person, I don't like the way you treat me, or you're doing something that is not kind. We
Yeah.
just grin and bear it, but under the skin, we're just boiling.
Mm.
But I feel so much better, and I really think I get a lot more respect, and people care for me more because I'm not a wuss.
Right.
They know that if they ask now, she's probably going to say no
Yeah.
because I was the one, like you jump off the porch and I got the net.
Yeah.
It's like, girl, bye. I You can do that. That no, I'm not doing it.
Right.
And I was like, wow, make them strong on their own because
Yeah.
they don't even appreciate what you're doing because you've done it so many times. It's just like breathing air.
Hmm.
It's a given.
Yeah.
And I'm mad. Here they come again. Now it's like I don't even lie. I used to
Mm.
say I don't have the money. I can't do it. And I'd give you this elaborate lie. I had to help my daughter or pay the insurance. Now I said no, I can't do that.
Hmm.
And they pause, and I just keep pausing. I'm not doing it. I said no,
Right.
I don't want to do that. I don't have money for that.
Hmm.
I don't say I don't got money
Mm.
because I used to, and they said, well, you got it. And I'm like, you don't know what I got. I could have a crack addiction for all you know.
Mm.
You think because I work, I got a certain amount of money. You don't know.
Mhm.
And now I just say, no, I don't have it for that. I can't loan that to you.
Yeah.
And I tell one cousin, I can't give it to you. I can't give it to you. She says, well, I'll pay. No, you never do. So
Mhm.
I won't give you nothing I'm not willing to release forever.
Right.
And I'm not in that position right now. And they either straighten up or they just don't call you no more. And you
Yeah.
know what the relationship was.
Yeah.
But that comes from being able to look at yourself objectively,
Mhm.
revisit a lot of the things you've done in your past, and ask yourself now, uh, was it ever appropriate?
Mhm.
No. So forgive yourself.
Yeah.
And moving on, I'm going to do this differently.
Yeah.
Or everybody doesn't get this part of you anymore, just
Mhm.
your, top five or whatever.
Mhm.
So I have changed and grown in so many ways out of necessity. And
Mhm.
now it's like I have no problem saying something doesn't work anymore. If it doesn't bear the fruit that I want,
Right.
I won't do it.
Mm.
And I'm at peace.
I like
Now,
that.
I got to share this.
Yes, ma'am.
I talked to a lady the other day, and she's not American. So they look at life different. So she said to me, you know what? You are doing so wonderful for a person who have had such a tragic background. And you must be proud of yourself, from where you come.
Mhm.
The poverty is what I think she was talking about. And I was offended
Mhm.
because how dare you?
Mhm.
But then I thought about it the next day and I said, she's right. But because she's not an American would have said it different.
Mhm.
They would have probably said, girl, you grew up on your bootstraps. You pull your bootstraps, or you have really persevered and changed your life. But
Mhm.
to start with, you didn't have Jack,
Mhm.
and you come from nothing. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
But I had to say that triggered me what she said
Mhm.
because the shame I felt when I was in that state,
Mhm.
and I knew I was triggered.
Yeah.
So I was able to process it and see that she really didn't mean anything in it and how she said it. That's her culture. She's not an American. They don't put verbs and adjectives together like we do. But
Right.
before I was healed, I would have taken that personal
Mhm.
because you said I come from nothing, even though I didn't. I don't like the way you said it.
Right.
But then
Right.
I felt this joy to say, sometimes I forget how far I've come from where
Mhm.
I started as a child,
Yeah.
and that you should be happy to for this all of this growth that you've experienced.
Mhm.
But shame will make us feel bad even in the face of doing wonderful.
Mhm.
Because I
So
was
true.
doing wonderful, but my
Yeah.
shame of being a teen mom
Mhm.
kept me from truly enjoying it because I had never left the survival poverty mindset completely.
Right.
And I was so happy that I actually could like do a rewind to what she said and
Yeah.
said she meant no harm.
Right.
And but you still got a little nugget of shame
Yeah.
because you were defensive.
But
And that's
I
that's a sign right there. If someone
yeah.
says something and you're too defensive, what is that pain that they just touched on?
Mhm.
And I realized she had touched on something that I was very shameful of. That was my upbringing. Yet I
Yeah.
had no control over that. That was
Right.
the life I was born into.
Yeah. And I like that instead of trying to eradicate it, get rid of, oh, forget that lady, I'm going to tell her off this, that, and the other. It's like you were able to revisit it, acknowledge that it triggered you, and then dig a little bit into seeing why did this trigger me? Oh, it's this specific shame that underlies this. And
Mm-hmm.
there's truth out of that that I can pull out. And I don't have to make the issue with her, but it's like, here's the issue that I had with myself. Let
Right.
me stop blaming myself. Let me forgive me, acknowledge what is, see how far I've come, and actually see, oh, okay, that was actually a blessing. It may have kind
Mm-hmm.
of come off sideways because it's like different culture, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, okay, like it was actually a compliment. That wasn't just like
Right.
somebody hit me
Exactly.
upside my head to be like, what the heck is your deal?
Yeah, I literally was feeling this sense of pride
Mm,
after it was all said and done and say, I remember thinking, you're a real mama jamma. Because
yeah,
so many people could not have gotten through what you went through.
Mm.
But the shame kept me from acknowledging the growth,
Yeah.
truly embracing the progress that I had made. And I'm
Mm.
like, shame is heavy.
Yeah. I'd say one of the things, I don't know if you're familiar with this gentleman. I think he passed away last year. Kevin Samuels. He came out with this moniker because one of the things I think he caught a lot of flack at was because he was one advocating for men, but also he decided to speak about accountability from the women's perspective to say that as much as men are told you have to be this, you have to be that, especially for straight heterosexual men, it's that women play a role in it too. And I think to your point, it's like nobody ever speaks against mom because it's like mom did the job of caring, mom is doing this. It's always like mom is under pressure, under stress, and it's like don't question anything that mom says. And it's like in the questioning or in putting up boundaries, it's not meant to disrespect mom. And even in saying, okay, analyze the black woman, for instance, it's not a thing of, okay, instead of working together, it's almost like people have forgotten that we started to grow further and further apart. And people like to ask certain questions where it's like they're not real questions because they can always be met with like basic answers or
Mhm.
like we say, oh yeah, somebody should really do something about this. But like if you look at who's asking and like how often the same question comes up, it's like you're not really willing to address that question
Right.
honestly enough
And
to
openly.
right
Right.
and openly to have an outcome. But the reason I brought up the Kevin Samuels gentleman is that one of the things that he would say as like this defense mechanism that someone would use or women specifically would use, but also I could see it myself as a guy. It's like, okay, don't do this if you don't want it done to you. It's like when you're losing an argument, there's the use of sign language, as you would say, is shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right. So it's like if you're having a conversation, whatever it may be, it's like you don't have to be disrespectful. But if somebody is approaching you with bad intentions, they'll start applying sign language. And it's like, okay, well, your mama's not this, or you're not this, or you don't come
Mhm.
from good stock. You're like, they just start throwing those little pepper jabs. So it's like you mentioned being a single mom, and it's that could keep you there. But it's like from that point, you made different decisions. And even in making those different decisions, there were still things you had to address. And instead of continuing to lash out at people and being like, okay, I'm going to throw one back at you, throw one back at you, it's like you started reflecting the mirror towards yourself and really doing that healing process. And it's like, oh, I don't need to be right in this, or I don't have to guilt someone into feeling a certain type of way, or I don't have to feel guilty. It's that
Okay.
just
Or
those
I have to
yeah,
respond.
yeah,
That's something that we're all so reactive. But I've learned to, like, I may make a little peep so I'm on the other line, or I'm,
mhm,
grunt so I'm listening, but I don't engage. And that was one of the things I needed to stop because I was always engaging.
yeah,
If you say something, I got to say something. Now my thing is less is more.
right. And I just brought up the gentleman as an example, but one of the things that I'm doing, even as I said what I just said now, is that I'm spending less time apologizing for having a thought or an opinion, but I'm taking more time to actually express myself and to be who I am and get to
Mhm.
learn that I can learn from anyone that's similar or very dissimilar to me. It doesn't need to be like political, spiritual, and anything in between because it's like, I think there's always something to be said where there's like divide and conquer. Like, if there's any kind of friction, confrontation, people just eat that stuff up. But it's
Oh,
like,
they know. And
yeah,
that's the thing. Me and my husband, we were disagreeing about something political.
mm,
And I said what I said. And then I saw that it was getting ready to be an argument. And I said, you know what? It's not even worth us getting into a disagreement. Most people watch the news. I
mhm,
read the paper.
mm,
So we get a different idea. And then those words make you convey certain things in your head, not
mhm,
listening to Joe Smo
yeah,
telling you his opinion. Because we all have biasness.
mm,
But we have to be so mindful that everybody's not like us, and we can't. Some of the worst things that happened to me in my life have yielded the biggest gifts in my life. I'll give you an example. When I was 10, I was sexually assaulted, beat up really bad, went to the doctor, got stitches in my head, but nobody ever talked about it. And so I slowly went into a mental state of probably depression, you would call it.
Mhm.
And I lost my ability to speak because of the inability to even talk about it. It's like we
Mm.
ain't talking about that. Bury it. That's the way it was done.
Right.
But society really did a number on me. So while I was unverbal,
Mm.
I literally consumed books like an addict.
Mm.
So within that hardship, the darkest day of my life, I come out of there smarter than the average bear because I read so much, and it was the type of reading that allowed me to get into a good high school. I passed the test with honors. So I tell people bad things happen, but we get to decide, are we going to be a victim of it forever? Or are we going to find some nugget in that hardship that'll get us on the other side to becoming whole again? And when I survived and finally got my voice back
Mm.
after the assault, when I got pregnant, I'd already had some bounce back in me by then, because to overcome that without any professional help,
Mm.
it was a miracle. So
Yeah.
now I'm like, if I could survive this, I'm going to survive that. So
Yeah.
I'm already looking at myself as a victor even before I am, because I survived that. I'm going to get out of this neighborhood, because if I don't, my son is going to be privy to the same hell I've had. And people say all the time, well, girl, I just can't see it. No, you have to forgive. You have to find a way to be okay with what happened. You
Right.
have to forgive yourself for the missteps you made. I mean, I was so pissed at my son's father for not being responsible when he said he would be.
Mhm.
And I had to say, well, you was the dumbass, because even though you didn't know,
Mhm.
you should ask somebody, because who got stuck, if you will. So I had to forgive myself that I played a role in it. And that's what a lot of women or men won't do. And you have to admit, hey, I screwed up, or that was a bad choice I made, or man, I got jacked or whatever. But you know what?
Mhm.
That thing is not going to be the end of my progress
Right. Or the end of you.
and for the end of you.
Yeah. And
But you got
yeah.
to figure out who or why, because if you don't, you'll stay there. My
Mm.
son' upcoming birth
Yeah.
was impetus for me to say, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I know what I ain't gonna do.
Right. And that helps more than one way. At least
Yeah.
don't go in that direction. Do anything else. But
Right. If
if
you go
yeah,
there, that's what you're gonna get, and if that's what you're running from, you better turn around and keep running the other way.
right.
Yes. And it's something that simple. It's
Yeah.
just as important as knowing what you want.
Yeah. I think I heard it said in taking the example of you having written your first book and even in doing social media, having conversations like this, is that in writing things down, their way of journaling or its way of categorizing your own history. But even with that lady telling you, it's like you had to remind yourself who you were and what you overcame. That way, it's like, oh, I did overcome that. So I can get over this being able to say no. Like I got through something that was so much harder. This little
Mm-hmm.
thing, it is a little thing. And
Right.
it's like if I could have done that, I can do this. Like
Yeah.
regardless of where my mind might be at, what I think, however big this giant may be. Like I listened to the message that your son did yesterday, and I happened to be flipping through YouTube, and I was like, let me check it out.
Was
And
that
when
the
he spoke
church?
about, yes, he spoke on the Goliaths, like being paralyzed by Goliaths,
Mhm.
and that message just it was it was at the right time,
Mhm.
and I was able to take it in, and pairing it with the conversation I had with my coach the same day, actually that morning, and then driving back because I took a trip for the weekend, going meet up with some brothers from the prayer line, see their event, and be able to celebrate them. And it was one of those things where when you get a message, And there's that feeling like, man, somebody could really use this. It's like, hey, that somebody's you. And
See,
like look in the mirror and be like, okay, I'm going to give this to myself, accept this message. And instead of just running at the mouth, wanting to give in order to get that affirmation back from someone that like it feels like I'm desperately starved for, I've started to slowly give myself the things that I need. And even if it's scrolling through social media and like finding a post or a talk that someone's giving or a message, I'm like, okay, let me like it, let me save it. That way, it's like if I need to be feeling a certain type of way, I think I titled a thing remember. So that
mhm,
way, it's like if I need to remember something, I'll go here to these saved videos or these saved posts, and I'll go, okay, here. And even in creating this podcast and highlighting yourself, it's funny how words work, but like it's titled It's My Time. And when I highlight the people and I highlight the messages, it's like the messages speak back to me and I have to hear myself speak back to myself. And
mhm.
I have to value what it is that I'm doing and what it is that I'm putting into it. Because what's funny is that like we talked about it briefly, and I've had other people ask me the question, and before I felt either a little lazy or a little guilty that okay, is this thing monetary or is it not? And the thing that I've in acknowledging that and looking at it on the face of it, I'm like, no, it's not. To answer the question on the short end, no, it's not there. It's not doing that. And that might be a goal, but it might not be my goal right now. But I know
Exactly.
that what I'm doing is meeting a need, and that need is more than sufficient for this. Like I'm not having to debate with myself like am I using this as a caveat to not do the work, so to speak, because it's like the work isn't the problem. The work's going to get done regardless. It's that valuing myself, that's
It's
the
so
challenge.
important. I
Yeah.
mean, it is a challenge because depending on your personality type,
Hmm.
I happen to be a high
S C.
S.
Yeah. You and me
And
both.
if we're not careful, we will be depleted and we'll wonder why. But we have to work so much harder. And as a high S,
Hmm.
I realized when I was depleted, I was a totally different person. Short, defensive, combative, even. And it's like I realized that a lots of times we actually operate in our what do you call adaptive
Yeah.
personality, and that's why we're not happy. Once I saw my strengths, but that strength could be a weakness if I wasn't careful,
Yeah.
I'm just happier.
Hmm.
And I think that my lower number, my adaptive, went way up because now I don't let people burn me out.
Right.
I'm conscious enough to say, you, by definition of who you are this supportive person.
Hmm.
But you allow people to take it to the nth degree because
Hmm.
you don't want to say no, or oh my God, if they say, oh girl, I need you, you'll stop cooking,
Yeah.
whatever you're doing. No. And they love, if they truly love us,
Hmm.
they'll accept that we're getting, I'm not going to call it stronger, but
Hmm.
more self protected.
Hmm.
And it's going to be a little time for they get it, but once they see that that's who you are, it's like I've moved to another season. It's not even I'm tired of people using me and I'm not doing that no more. It's like I'm
Yeah.
not there now, I'm here. And it causes me to be more self-absorbent,
Yeah.
but I get organized better so they can get what they want, but it's not against what I want. We're
Hmm.
more in lockstep
Hmm.
than me just being an overgiver.
Yeah.
It's not healthy for them and it's not healthy for us.
Yeah. And I like the use of seasons because seasons come and seasons go and they change. And it's
That's
not a
yep.
forever thing. It's like life is something that continues to move on year in, year out, day in, day out. And it's you take it for what it is and you respect it. Like right now
Yes.
it's summertime. We're not outside trying to record this. Is like we have the good fortune of air conditioning. So we're sitting
Right.
inside somewhere nice and cool, air conditioned. And it's like when winter time's gonna come, we're gonna crank up the heat a little bit. First, we're gonna enjoy fall, look at the leaves change and whatever comes with that. And it's that actually there's something to be said about like the more you become a better observer of yourself. And I like the way that you said it, a better protector of yourself. You actually see the world different, and you gain
Mm,
an appreciation for just what's actually happening, not just around you, but within you. And
yeah,
that helps you put those different pieces of yourself back together.
back together because we're all broken in some manner of speaking. And
Mm,
sometimes it's not even what someone's done, it's how we perceive the world. It's
mm,
not always somebody's fault. But that when we come to grips with that, when I came to grips with a lot of things, I am just in a better state of mind, emotionally healthier. And with that, you find that you're on a higher frequency now. And you attract different people because when you're a naysayer or you're depressed, I swear they all your friends depressed, it looks like. You can't grow.
right.
But as I elevated and I started questioning why my intentions of why I did things, was it organic? Was it natural? Or was this something you felt you needed to do to be a part of this group or this relationship? No, if it was, it's not real. And it's tension and stress.
Right.
But when I find I'm doing things organically, even if I'm overwhelmed, I'm not overwhelmed
Mm,
because I'm in the right frame of mind.
right.
But when I'm doing things that I'm really not connected to in a way that's healthy or that I really want, I find that it's a drag. And so now I don't do, if I feel like it's a drag, mm-mm, I'm going to try to help you. But if it's going to put me in a emotional, unstable spot, I might have to send somebody else in there to help you. It
Yeah.
won't be
Yeah. And when, what did they say? When it's an emergency, don't call me, call
me.
911.
That's
They'll
right.
get there quicker.
Yeah, because people will make it an emergency.
Yeah.
Because for me, I would get it. Oh, they about to pull my car. Why? I mean, I'm 4 months behind. Nobody got 4 months of car note for you, baby. They're gonna pull that car. I promise you. If you
Yeah.
think I'm gonna be the one, and there's like, I can't believe she wouldn't help. I got kids and no, it's not my. I don't make it my job like I used to.
Yeah.
Now people will do better because they can't assume 100%
Mhm.
on your reaction when you tell them I'm in a new season, and I
Mm.
don't do that.
Yeah.
They figure it out, and most of them will stop before they have to jump out of the burning building
Yeah.
because you're just not doing it no more because we're not mad. I'm in a different season, and I love the way that sounds because we have 4 seasons.
Mm.
Saying I'm just tired, yeah, that's combative, and then they want to you got to defend your position. No, I'm in a different season now, and I'm just not doing those type of things, and I'm so sorry,
Mm.
but I'm trying to, do what I like right now. I tell people I'm on my last leg, so I got to be mindful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I life is a
Yeah.
continuum, and I'm so grateful to still be able to have an open heart and an open mind and continue to grow even into my 70s.
That's beautiful.